The Rescue in the Shadows. The night sky of the alien city glowed with strange lights. Towers of silver stone reached high, their edges glowing faintly with runes that pulsed like living veins. The streets below were narrow and filled with mist, giving the place an eerie silence. A human soldier named Daniel moved carefully through the shadows, his heart steady but his eyes sharp. He had been sent to this world as part of a trade mission, but now he found himself alone, separated from his group after an ambush. As he passed through a dark alley, Daniel heard a sound. It was not the heavy steps of soldiers, nor the hum of machines. It was the soft cry of someone in distress. His instincts sharpened, and he followed the sound. What he saw made his blood run cold. A young alien girl, barely in her teenage years by human measure, was cornered by two armored hunters. Their weapons gleamed under the moonlight, and their words were sharp and cruel. She trembled as she tried to back away, but the wall pressed against her small frame. She had nowhere to go. Her eyes, large and bright with fear, caught Daniel's for a brief second, and in that moment he saw her desperation. Daniel knew he should not interfere. He knew that this planet had laws, traditions, and powers far beyond his understanding. Yet his human heart could not allow him to walk away. Without thinking further, he stepped forward from the shadows. His boots echoed lightly on the stones as he made his presence known. "Leave her," he said in a calm but firm voice. The hunters turned, their armor clinking as their insect-like masks reflected the dim light. They laughed at the sight of him, a lone human, unarmed except for the short blade at his side. One of them raised his weapon slowly, aiming it toward Daniel's chest. "Go back." "Off-worlder," the taller one sneered. "This is not your concern." But Daniel did not move. His jaw tightened and his eyes did not flinch. He had seen battles before. He had faced fear before. And he knew one truth. Sometimes courage was not a choice, but a duty. He stepped closer, placing himself between the girl and the hunters. The younger alien gasped softly, her small hands clutching at her tunic. She could not believe a stranger, a human no less, would risk himself for her. Her people did not often interfere, not when hunters had made a claim. To resist was to invite punishment. The hunters exchanged glances. Growing annoyed by his defiance, one swung his weapon forward, intending to shove him aside. Daniel reacted quickly. He ducked under the motion, grabbing the hunter's wrist and twisting sharply. The alien let out a snarl of pain as the weapon clattered to the ground. The second hunter lunged, but Daniel kicked forward with precise force, slamming his boot into the attacker's chest. The hunter stumbled back, surprised by the human's strength. The fight was brief but fierce, and in the narrow alley, Daniel's quick reflexes gave him the advantage. Within moments, both hunters were disarmed and retreating, muttering curses in their alien tongue as they vanished into the shadows. Silence returned, broken only by the girl's shaky breathing. Daniel turned slowly toward her, his voice softened. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though her wide eyes stayed fixed on him. She had never seen anything like this. No one had ever stood between her and danger like that. In her world, power and rights were always claimed by others, never given freely. She could not understand why this human, a stranger, had risked everything for her. Daniel crouched slightly, trying to meet her eye level. "You're safe now," he said, "but we need to move." "Others may come," she hesitated, still trembling. Then, slowly, she nodded. Her voice was a whisper, filled with both fear and awe. Why did you save me?" Daniel paused. He could have explained duty, or honor, or human nature. But instead, he gave the simplest answer, one that carried the truth of his heart. "Because you needed me." The girl's lips trembled, and for the first time, a small spark of hope flickered in her eyes. She followed him as he led her through the winding alleys. Away from the danger, neither of them knew it yet. But this single act of kindness would soon draw them into the heart of an ancient law, a law that would bind them in chains of tradition and shake the balance of their worlds, the weight of alien law. The streets grew quieter as Daniel and the young alien girl moved deeper into the city. The faint glow of runes on the stone walls cast strange, shifting shadows, and every sound of their footsteps seemed louder than it should have been. The girl kept glancing back, her fear not yet settled, and though Daniel had driven off the hunters, he knew the danger was far from over. He felt the weight of unseen eyes, the silent judgment of a world that did not welcome interference from outsiders. They finally reached a hidden courtyard where an old fountain trickled softly. Daniel guided her there, letting her rest against the carved edge. He crouched beside her and scanned the dark entrances around them. The silence was heavy, but soon the girl spoke, her voice small yet steady. "You should not have done that." Daniel looked at her with confusion. "I could not leave you there," he replied. "They would have hurt you." Her hands clenched tightly at the fabric of her tunic, her eyes shifting downward. "You do not understand," she whispered. "Here, nothing belongs to me, not even the right to be saved." The words struck him as strange. He leaned closer, trying to understand. "What do you mean?" The girl swallowed hard, as if the very truth she carried was too heavy for her. "I am the younger daughter of my house," she explained. "By tradition, everything that comes to me belongs to my elder sister. Every gift, every bond, even every act of kindness. The law says I have no claim to anything unless my sister grants it to me." Daniel's brows furrowed. He had expected strict laws, perhaps harsh justice, but this was something deeper, more binding than any chain. "So because I helped you," he said slowly, "your sister will claim me?" She nodded, and her voice trembled. "Yes, you saved me, and so you are counted as mine. But because I am the younger, all that is mine is hers. My elder sister will say you belong to her, and the council will listen." They always listen. Daniel sat back, his chest tightening. The idea of being treated as property, a reward, was something that clashed with every part of his being. He was a soldier, a man with a will of his own. And yet, in this alien world, his choices could be stripped away by tradition. Still, what unsettled him more was the fear in the girl's eyes, not for herself, but for him. The girl looked up at him then, her gaze pleading. "She will come soon. She will claim you, and no one will stop her. You do not know her. She is powerful, proud, and cruel when challenged. You should run before it is too late." Daniel shook his head. His voice was calm but unyielding. "I will not run," he said. "If your people have laws, then I will face them. But I will not abandon you." Her lips parted, and she stared at him in silence. No one had ever spoken such words to her. In her world, younger daughters were shadows, never protected, never valued, and now, this human stood before her like a shield, daring to face the wrath of an elder for her sake. Something inside her, long buried, stirred at his words. The sound of approaching footsteps broke the fragile quiet, heavy and deliberate. They echoed through the courtyard. Daniel stood, placing himself once again between the girl and the new threat. From the shadows of the archway, figures emerged, armored guards with spears tipped in glowing crystal. Their presence filled the courtyard with cold authority, and behind them walked a tall figure draped in royal silk, her eyes sharp as blades. The younger girl lowered her head instantly. Trembling, "My sister," she whispered. The elder sister stepped forward, her expression unreadable but her presence commanding. She was beautiful in a harsh, untouchable way, her posture straight, her voice clear. "So it is true," she said, her gaze falling on Daniel. "A human has dared to involve himself in the affairs of my house." Daniel met her stare without flinching, but she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that promised control rather than kindness. "You saved my younger sister," she said, her tone laced with mockery. "By tradition, that means you are hers, and by law, that means you are mine." She raised her hand, her voice ringing with finality. "From this moment, you belong to me," the younger sister gasped, her small voice desperate. "No, sister, he saved me. He chose to protect me. He is not yours to take." But the elder did not even glance at her. "You speak out of turn, little one," she snapped. Her eyes stayed locked on Daniel, daring him to defy her. The guards tightened their grip on their spears, ready to enforce her words. Daniel felt the tension close in on him. His instincts screamed to resist. But he also knew he was in the heart of their power. One wrong move could mean death not only for him, but for the girl he had just saved. He clenched his fists, his mind racing. He was trapped in a tradition that saw him as nothing more than a possession. And yet his heart told him this was only the beginning of something much larger. The night air felt colder, the weight of the alien law pressing down on him like iron chains. The younger sister's eyes were wide with fear, and the elder sister's gaze was sharp with victory. Daniel stood in silence, caught in the middle of a tradition that threatened to claim his very soul. The elder sister's claim. The courtyard grew colder under the weight of silence. The guards stood firm with their crystal spears pointed downward but ready to rise at a command. The younger sister bowed her head, her entire frame trembling as though the very air around her was pressing her down. The elder sister, tall and commanding, walked closer to Daniel, her silk robes sweeping across the stone floor like flowing shadows. Her presence was not only of authority, but of a law that no one in this world dared to question. Daniel remained still, his stance steady even though he felt the circle of power closing tightly around him. The elder sister's gaze swept over him slowly, as if she were inspecting a new piece of property. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but it was the smile of ownership, not warmth. She lifted her chin and spoke in a tone that carried across the courtyard with ease. By the traditions of our people, all that belongs to the younger belongs to the elder. You stood between my sister and her hunters. You shed the risk of your life to protect her. That bond, that courage, that act, it is hers by right, and so it is mine by law. From this moment, human. You belong to me. The words struck like iron chains falling around Daniel's shoulders. He had expected resistance, perhaps punishment for interference, but never to be declared property. His jaw tightened as he stared at her, refusing to lower his eyes. In his world, no human was ever owned. No soldier ever surrendered his will. Yet here, under these alien stars, he was being stripped of that very freedom. The younger sister's voice broke through the tense air, small but desperate. "Sister, please," she whispered. "He saved me. He is not a possession. He is not something you can take." Her words shook, but there was strength beneath them, a boldness rarely shown by the younger daughters of their kind. She dared to lift her eyes toward her elder, though they shimmered with fear. The elder turned her head slowly, her eyes narrowing on her sibling. The courtyard seemed to grow darker as her voice dropped. "You forget your place, little one," she said coldly. "Everything you are, everything you touch, everything you are given, belongs to me. That is our law. That is our blood. Even this human you cling to is not yours to keep. He is mine. As all things are mine." The guards shifted slightly, as though ready to silence any further defiance. Daniel's fists clenched at his sides. His instincts told him to fight, to reject the claim. But his mind reminded him that this was not his battlefield. He was surrounded, outnumbered, and bound by a law he could not yet break without understanding the cost. Still, he did not remain silent. His voice cut through the courtyard with steady force. "I do not belong to anyone," he said. "I chose to protect her because it was right, not because of your law. I will not be owned." Gasps rippled through the guards, and even the younger sister's breath caught. No outsider had ever dared speak such words against the tradition. The elder sister's eyes sharpened, the faint smile vanishing into something darker. Her voice grew sharp like the edge of a blade. "You speak of choice," she said, "but here, choice does not exist for those beneath our law. You are bold, human, but boldness will not free you. It will only bring you pain." She stepped even closer. Now, standing only a short distance away from him, her presence was overwhelming. Her power undeniable, but Daniel did not back away. His stance was firm, his eyes locked on hers. The younger sister watched with wide eyes, her heart torn between admiration and fear. For the first time, she saw someone stand against her elder, someone unbroken by the law she had always thought unshakable. The elder sister lifted her hand, and at once, the guards raised their spears in unison. The glowing tips hummed with energy, pointed directly at Daniel's chest. The moment was thick with tension, every breath heavy. Every guard waited for her single command, one word that could end his life in an instant. Yet she did not give the order. Instead, she lowered her hand slowly, her gaze never leaving Daniel's. A dangerous smile returned to her lips. "You will learn," she said quietly, almost like a whisper meant only for him. "You will learn that resistance is useless. You will learn that the weight of tradition cannot be broken by one man's will. You will learn to kneel, and when you do, you will know you are mine." She turned sharply, her robes sweeping behind her, and the guards formed around her as she began to walk away, leaving the command unspoken, but the threat heavy in the air. Daniel stood unmoving, his jaw tight, his heart racing. The younger sister hurried to his side, her eyes wet with unshed tears. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "You do not know what you have done. She will not forget this. She will make you bend, or she will break you." Daniel placed a steady hand on her shoulder, his eyes still fixed on the fading figure of the elder sister. "Then let her try," he said, his voice low but strong. In that moment, he knew the path ahead was filled with danger, not just from the elder sister's claim, but from the very weight of a tradition that had ruled this world for generations. He was no longer just a soldier lost in a foreign city. He was now the center of a storm that would decide not only his fate, but perhaps the fate of the sisters and the law that bound them. The fountain trickled softly behind them, but its sound no longer carried peace. It was the sound of time slipping away, the sound of a calm before the inevitable storm. Whispers of rebellion, the city never truly slept. Runes glowed faintly on towers and streets, casting the stone walls in a soft, unnatural light, yet for Daniel, the human soldier, the night felt heavier than any battlefield he had ever crossed. The elder sister's claim still echoed in his mind, her cold words declaring him hers by law. He had faced enemies before. He had fought with weapons and tactics. But now he faced something far more dangerous, a tradition older than memory, and a woman who embodied its unyielding power. The younger sister walked silently beside him, her steps small and hesitant. She kept glancing at him as though she feared he might vanish at any moment. Her world had always told her that nothing belonged to her, not even her own choices, yet this human had stood in defiance against her elder, had spoken words no one dared to speak. That defiance burned like a small flame in her chest, fragile yet impossible to ignore. They entered a quiet chamber hidden within the palace grounds, a place where servants and lesser kin rarely ventured. The walls were carved with faded runes of protection, but here the glow was dim, forgotten by time. It was a place the younger sister often escaped to when the weight of her role became unbearable. Now she brought Daniel there, whispering that no ears would hear them. She faced him with trembling hands, her voice breaking the silence. "You should not have spoken against her. My sister does not forgive. She will make you suffer until you bow." Her eyes filled with fear, yet there was something more behind them. A question she dared not speak aloud. Daniel stood tall, his arms folded across his chest, his gaze firm. "I will not bow," he said simply. "Not to her, not to your laws. A man cannot be owned. My life is mine. My choices are mine." His words were steady, each one carrying weight. The younger sister lowered her head, her voice almost a whisper. "If only you knew how many have tried. No one breaks tradition. It binds us all. It binds me, too. I am the younger. And that means I will always be less, always be nothing." Daniel stepped closer, his voice gentler. "You are not nothing," he said. "You have a voice. You have a heart. And sometimes all it takes is one voice refusing to be silent to change everything." She looked up at him, her wide eyes shimmering. Her lips trembled as though she wanted to believe, but fear chained her heart. Still, his words settled within her, like seeds planted in barren soil. Suddenly, a faint knock echoed on the chamber door. The younger sister stiffened, rushing to cover the lantern, plunging them into shadows. Daniel's hand instinctively moved to the small blade at his belt. The door creaked open, and a young servant girl slipped inside, her eyes darting around nervously before settling on the younger sister. "My lady," the servant whispered. "I should not be here. If they find me, I will be punished. But I had to tell you, your elder sister spreads word already. She says the human is hers. She says he defied her, and soon the council will call a trial. The whole city whispers of it." The younger sister's breath caught, her hands trembling as she whispered back, "A trial." Her eyes turned to Daniel, wide with dread. "They will not only bind you by law, they may seek to destroy you." The servant hesitated before leaning closer, her voice even softer. "Not all in the city agree with her. Some have seen what you did. Some whisper that perhaps the law is not as eternal as we were taught. They are afraid, but they talk. They say a human who defied tradition may be the one to break it." Daniel listened in silence, his eyes narrowing with thought. He had not come to this world to start a rebellion, yet already the sparks of it were forming. He could feel it in the servant's trembling voice, in the younger sister's hesitant hope, in the unease of those who watched from the shadows. His choice to save one girl had shaken the order of an empire. When the servant left, fear etched on her face. The chamber fell silent once more. The younger sister looked at Daniel, her voice unsteady. "Do you hear it? They whisper, but they whisper of change. And yet I am afraid. If you stand against her, she will crush you. She has the power of the council, the power of the law. No one has ever won against her." Daniel's voice was low, filled with quiet resolve. "Then let her bring her power. I do not fear her. Fear belongs to those who accept chains, not to those who break them." Her chest tightened at his words, and she pressed a trembling hand to her heart. For the first time in her life, she felt something she could not name, a flicker of courage drawn from him. It was fragile, yes, but it was real. Outside, the city's whispers grew louder, carried by servants and merchants, spreading through markets and halls. The story of the human who defied the elder sister's claim became fuel for quiet conversations. Some dismissed it as foolishness, others as heresy, but for many, it stirred something dangerous, an idea. The idea that even the strongest law could be challenged. The younger sister sat beside Daniel, her voice soft yet stronger than before. Perhaps you are the one they fear most. Not because you are strong, but because you refuse to kneel." Daniel looked out through the narrow window, the alien stars burning like cold fire above. His jaw tightened as he whispered to himself, "Then let them fear." The night wrapped around them, heavy with silence, yet beneath it the first quiet murmurs of rebellion stirred, fragile but unbreakable, like the first crack in ancient stone. The human's defiance. The council chamber was vast and cold, its ceiling so high that the light of the glowing runes barely reached its peak. Tall pillars lined the hall, carved with stories of ancient victories and eternal laws. Rows of alien nobles filled the seats, their eyes gleaming with curiosity and hunger for spectacle. At the center stood Daniel, a single human surrounded by armored guards. His hands were free, but the circle of spears around him made it clear that his freedom was an illusion. The younger sister stood hidden in the crowd, her heart pounding as she watched him. She had begged him not to confront the council, not to stand openly against her elder sister's claim, but Daniel had only given her a calm look and said that silence was the true death. Now, as she looked upon him, she realized he was unshaken. His shoulders were straight, his eyes steady, as though he had stepped into battle once more. The elder sister entered with regal steps, her robes shimmering with threads of silver. Her gaze was sharp and cold, carrying the weight of tradition and power. She walked to the front of the chamber and faced the council, her voice clear and commanding. "This human has defied the sacred law of our people. He interfered where he should not. He claimed a bond with my younger sister, and by right that bond is mine. Yet he dares to deny it. He dares to stand here and speak against tradition older than his world." Murmurs rippled through the council, many nodding in agreement, others watching with careful silence. The elder sister's eyes turned to Daniel, her lips curling faintly. "Kneel, human. Prove that you understand your place, and I may grant you mercy." Daniel's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon him. waiting for him to bend, waiting for him to prove the law unbroken. But within his heart, something stronger burned. He took a slow step forward, his voice carrying through the chamber, steady and unyielding. "I will not kneel. Not to you, not to your law, not to anyone who believes a person can be owned. I am human, and we do not bow to chains." The words struck the chamber like thunder. Gasps filled the air, nobles whispering sharply to one another. The younger sister's breath caught, tears burning her eyes as she clutched her hands to her chest. Her elder sister's expression darkened, her voice cutting through the uproar. "Your arrogance blinds you. Do you think your defiance makes you strong? You are alone, surrounded by power greater than you. Speak carefully, for every word you utter digs your grave deeper." Daniel's gaze did not falter. His voice grew louder, filled with a fire that could not be hidden. "Strength is not in power. Strength is not in chains or in titles. Strength is in the choice to stand when all others bow. Strength is in protecting the weak. In defying injustice, you call me arrogant. But I tell you this, your law is nothing. A tradition built on fear will crumble when even one voice dares to say no." The chamber fell into stunned silence. The council had never heard such words. The alien nobles stared, their disbelief mixing with something they could not name. Some looked away in discomfort, others leaned forward as though captivated. The elder sister's eyes burned with fury, yet beneath that fury flickered something else, something unsettled. She raised her hand and shouted, "Enough, guards! Silence him." The guards stepped forward, spears raised, but Daniel did not retreat. His stance was firm, his eyes locked on hers. He did not move to fight. He did not even reach for the blade at his side. Instead, he stood with defiance alone, his very stillness more powerful than any weapon. At that moment, the younger sister stepped forward from the crowd. Her voice trembled but rang clear. "Stop!" she cried, her small frame shook. But she pushed her way into the circle, standing between Daniel and the raised spears. "You cannot silence him. He speaks what none of us dare to speak. He is not wrong. His courage is not arrogance. It is truth." The council erupted in chaos, voices clashing, some demanding her silence, others questioning the law for the first time in generations. The elder sister's face grew pale with fury as she hissed, "You betray your blood, little one?" The younger sister lifted her head high, her voice shaking but strong. "I do not betray. I speak what I have always known in my heart. I am not nothing. I am not empty, and he is not yours to claim." The moment burned like fire across the chamber. Daniel looked at her with quiet pride. Her courage had blossomed in the very heart of fear. His own voice returned louder than before, carrying through the noise of the crowd. "You wanted me to kneel, but instead I stand. I will not be broken, and I will not let her be broken either." The uproar rose higher. Guards hesitated and the council wavered. For the first time, the law itself seemed uncertain. The elder sister's lips pressed into a thin line, her power shaken not by violence but by defiance. Her command hung unspoken, for she knew that one wrong word now might turn the council itself against her. Daniel's voice lowered, steady and calm, yet filled with iron. "I am not yours, I never will be, and one day this law you cling to will fall, not by my hand, but by the will of those who are no longer afraid." The chamber pulsed with tension, the whispers of rebellion now louder than ever, and the elder sister knew this battle was no longer hers to control. Trial of blood and fire, the council chamber did not calm after Daniel's words. Instead, it erupted into a storm of voices. Nobles shouted in anger, some in fear, and a few in curiosity. The elder sister stood tall in the chaos, her fury sharpened into a dangerous calm. She raised her hand, and the hall fell into silence. Her voice rang out like iron. "If this human refuses the law, then let him prove himself in the trial of blood and fire. Let him face what no outsider has survived. Let him show his strength or perish before us all." Gasps spread through the chamber. The trial was ancient, spoken of in whispers but rarely called upon. It was not meant for justice, but for spectacle. A brutal gauntlet of challenges that tested body, Spirit and will. No alien dared to face it unless forced, and none who had entered had ever walked away unbroken. For Daniel, it was a death sentence in disguise. The younger sister cried out, her voice desperate, "No, you cannot. He has done nothing to deserve this." But the elder sister silenced her with a cold glance. The council, bound by tradition, nodded in agreement. The trial was declared, and the chamber echoed with the sound of the old gong that marked destiny. That night, Daniel was led to the arena. It was an ancient place beneath the city, carved into the rock long before memory. Flames burned in great braziers along the walls, casting the space in shifting light. The floor was etched with runes that glowed faintly as though hungry for blood. Chains and scorched marks hinted at battles long past. The air was thick with heat and silence, broken only by the distant roar of something unseen. The younger sister was forced to watch from behind the bars of a high balcony. Her hands clutched the railing until her knuckles turned pale. She wanted to scream, to beg again for his release, but the council's decree was final. Her elder stood beside her with a cruel smile, whispering, "Watch closely, little one. This is what becomes of those who defy the law." The gates of the arena creaked open, and Daniel stepped forward. His armor was light, barely enough to protect him, and in his hands was only a simple blade. His heart pounded, but his steps were steady. He had faced fire before, he had faced fear before, and he knew one truth. Survival was not only about strength but about refusing to surrender. The first trial came without warning. From the shadows burst a beast unlike any he had ever seen. Its body was covered in scales that shimmered like metal, its jaws lined with teeth that glowed faintly in the firelight. The crowd roared as the creature charged. Daniel dodged to the side, rolling across the scorched floor. The heat burned his skin, but he pushed forward, striking with his blade at the creature's flank. Sparks flew, the steel barely scratching the scales. The beast turned, its tail whipping like a hammer. Daniel was thrown to the ground, the breath ripped from his lungs. The crowd cheered for his fall, but Daniel forced himself up, his chest heaving. He steadied his grip and waited. He knew brute force would not win here. He needed to be smarter, faster. The creature lunged again, its jaws snapping. Daniel dodged and drove his blade into the softer skin beneath its throat. The beast roared, blood spilling onto the scorched stones. Daniel held his ground, pushing the blade deeper until the creature collapsed. The arena shook with the sound of its death. Silence fell, then murmurs. No human should have survived the first trial. Yet he stood alive, his blade dripping with proof of his will. But the trial was not over. The second gate opened, and fire itself poured through. Streams of flame licked across the arena as metal contraptions unfolded. Ancient machines powered by alien energy turned the ground into a burning maze. Daniel leapt across glowing stones, his skin blistering from the heat. Every step was agony. Every breath scorched his lungs, but he did not stop. He kept moving, his mind focused on one thought. Endure. The council watched with fascination. Some whispered that no one could withstand such pain. Yet the human pushed forward. His clothes burned at the edges, his skin marked with fire, but his eyes remained bright with unbroken defiance. When the flames finally receded, Daniel stood on the far side of the arena, wounded but unbowed. The final trial began. The floor of the arena cracked, and from its depths rose a creature of both flesh and fire, its body wrapped in chains that glowed like molten iron. It was not just a beast, it was a spirit of the trial itself, summoned to break the will of any who dared resist. The creature roared, and the walls shook. Daniel's chest ached, his arms heavy, yet his spirit surged. He gripped his blade tighter, whispering to himself, "I will not kneel," the creature charged. Fire spilling from its mouth, Daniel dodged. Rolling across the scorched stones, he leapt forward, striking at the chains that bound the creature's body. The first strike cracked one, the second shattered another. The beast screamed in fury as the chains fell away. But instead of growing stronger, the creature began to weaken. Its fire dimming, its power fading, Daniel realized the truth. The trial was not about killing, It was about enduring long enough to break the chains of fear itself. With one final strike, he shattered the last chain, and the creature collapsed into ash and silence. The arena fell still. The crowd was silent. The council stared, stunned. Daniel stood bloodied and burned, yet alive. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes glowed with defiance that even fire could not break. He raised his blade slowly, not in victory, but in declaration. "I am not yours," he said, his voice raw yet strong. "No chain, no fire, no law will make me kneel." The younger sister's eyes filled with tears, pride swelling within her. The elder sister's face hardened, fury mixing with disbelief. The council murmured in shock, for never before had one stood unbroken through the trial of blood and fire. Daniel remained, not as property, not as a prisoner, but as a symbol, a human who had endured what no one else dared. The whispers of rebellion grew louder that night, carried on every voice that saw him survive. The breaking of chains. The arena still smelled of smoke and blood, yet the silence that followed Daniel's survival felt louder than the roars that had filled it before. Nobles who once scoffed now leaned forward with wide eyes, some whispering in disbelief, others sitting frozen as if they had witnessed the impossible. The guards who had once raised their spears against him now shifted uncertainly, as though unsure if they faced a prisoner or something greater. Daniel stood in the center of the scorched stone, his chest heaving, his clothes torn and burned, his body marked with wounds from fire and battle, yet his eyes were steady, burning with the same defiance that had carried him from the first moment he stepped into the shadows to protect the younger sister. He had faced monsters, he had walked through fire, and he had shattered chains both real and symbolic. His voice carried as he repeated the words that now seemed to shake the very foundation of the chamber. "I am not yours. I will never be yours." The younger sister gripped the railing of the balcony, tears streaming down her face. For so long she had believed she was nothing, that every gift, every bond, every act of kindness would always belong to her elder. But now, standing before her, was proof that chains could be broken. Her heart pounded with something new, something dangerous and liberating. For the first time in her life, she dared to believe that she was not empty, not powerless. She dared to believe that she too could stand. The elder sister, however, was not moved to silence. Her fury was colder than fire, sharper than steel. She stepped forward to the edge of the council platform, her voice cutting like a blade. "This proves nothing," she declared. "He is strong, yes, but strength does not erase tradition. The law is eternal, and by that law he belongs to me. His defiance is arrogance, and arrogance will be his downfall." But her words did not carry the same weight they once did. The council stirred uneasily, voices rising in debate. Some spoke of tradition, of the law that bound their people for centuries, but others whispered of change, of a man who had faced the trial and walked away unbroken. Doubt, once unthinkable, had begun to spread. Daniel lifted his head, his voice calm but carrying through the hall. "Your law is nothing but fear wrapped in words. You use it to claim, to bind, to strip others of their will. But laws built on fear do not last. They crumble when even one person dares to stand against them. Today it was me, but tomorrow it may be her." His eyes turned toward the younger sister, and the council followed his gaze. The younger sister's breath caught. Her body shook as every eye turned to her. For a moment she wanted to shrink, to bow her head as she always had. Yet Daniel's words lit a fire within her. She stepped forward, her small frame trembling but her voice ringing out clear for the first time. "He is right. I have lived my whole life in silence, told that nothing is mine, told that I must accept chains I did not choose, but I will no longer accept them. I am not nothing, and I will not let the law make me nothing again." Gasps filled the chamber. Nobles leaned forward in disbelief. The younger sister's defiance was even more shocking than Daniel's, for she was of their blood, bound by the same law she now rejected. Her elder's face went pale with fury, her voice rising in a roar. You dare to speak against me, against the council, against the very blood that binds us? You betray everything." But the younger sister did not back down. She lifted her chin and declared, "No, I am not betraying. I am breaking free. He showed me that chains are not destiny. He showed me that courage can be greater than fear, and if one human can endure fire to prove it, then I can endure my fear to speak it." The hall erupted into chaos. Some nobles shouted for her punishment. Others called for silence, but many remained hushed, watching with wide eyes as history shifted before them. For the first time in generations, the law itself was being spoken against openly, not by an outsider alone, but by one of their own. The elder sister tried to command the guards, but they hesitated. Their eyes flickered between the sisters, between the human who had endured the impossible and the younger who now stood unshaken. The weight of fear that had always pressed them down seemed weaker. Their spears lowered slowly, uncertainly. Daniel stepped closer, his voice steady but powerful. "You cannot force obedience forever. You cannot chain hearts forever. You cannot silence voices forever. Today is proof of that. Your law has already begun to break." The elder sister's scream of rage filled the chamber, but her power slipped like sand through her fingers. She could see it in the eyes of the council, in the whispers that refused to die, in the way even her guards no longer moved with certainty. She had lost the one thing her law had always given her: absolute control. The younger sister turned to Daniel, her eyes filled with both fear and hope. Her voice was soft, but the chamber carried it. "What happens now?" Daniel looked at her, then at the council, then at the gathering crowd beyond the chamber doors. His words came low but strong. "Now you choose. You decide whether you will remain bound to fear, or whether you will break the chains and walk free." The silence that followed was heavy, but within it the whispers of rebellion grew louder. No longer soft, no longer hidden. They rose like fire catching dry wood, spreading from voice to voice. For the first time the law trembled, and so the story did not end with Daniel kneeling, nor with him bound. It ended with the first true crack in an empire's chains. With one human's defiance and one younger sister's courage, a tradition that ruled for centuries now faced its end. The fire of rebellion had begun, and nothing would ever be the same again.